Dear Soul Stories family, today we bring you a tale of unexpected romance and high-stakes emotion. Let's dive in. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story that touches the heart. Ruby Collins stood near the edge of the grand ballroom, gripping her planner tightly. Her eyes swept the glamorous crowd. Shimmering gowns floated by, sleek tuxedos brushed past, mingling with polished laughter and the soft clink of crystal glasses. She adjusted her earpiece, her voice cool and clear through the comms. Lighting, dim the chandelier 10%. Florals, check the centerpiece. Main table has one rose out of alignment. This wasn't just any wedding. It was Emily Vanderbilt's, Ruby's best friend, to Nathaniel Harrington, heir and CEO of Harrington Enterprises. It wasn't just a marriage, it was an alliance of dynasties. Ruby had planned this day down to the last ribbon for 3 months, from custom-stitched linens to a gourmet menu curated by a Michelin chef. Yet something in her gut twisted with unease as the ceremony hour approached. "Ruby, where are you? I need you immediately." Margaret Harrington's sharp voice, Nathaniel's mother, pierced through the earpiece, sending Ruby into high alert. She frowned and broke into a brisk walk down the hallway toward the bridal suite. Margaret Harrington rarely raised her voice. For her to sound urgent now meant something was truly wrong. Ruby pushed the door open and found Margaret standing stiffly by the vanity, a paper trembling in her manicured hands. The room, meant to be filled with giggles and bridesmaids, was eerily quiet. Emily's exquisite wedding gown hung untouched on the rack, a glaring sign of trouble. "What's happened, Mrs. Harrington?" Ruby asked, trying to keep her voice steady as dread crept in. Margaret handed her the letter, hands shaking. "Emily! She's gone!" Ruby blinked, stunned. She took the note and read the scrawled handwriting. "I'm sorry, I can't. I need time. Don't look for me." "Emily!" Ruby's lips parted. "No, she wouldn't. She loves Nate, doesn't she? They've been engaged for a year." Margaret shook her head, her mouth a tight line. "It wasn't love. It was duty. Edward orchestrated the match for business reasons. But now," she closed her eyes briefly, panic seeping in. "If this falls through, Edward will never forgive Nathaniel." Ruby's stomach dropped. Edward Harrington, Nate's father, was infamous for his brutal tactics in business and parenting. She'd heard how Nate once got called in and berated for hours over a minor contract. A wedding disaster, especially one with this kind of symbolism, would be devastating. "So what now?" Ruby asked, thinking aloud. "Cancel the ceremony? Make an excuse?" "No!" Margaret snapped, then dropped her voice, eyes gleaming with a desperate idea. "We can't cancel. Edward's already told the board, the partners, the investors. If this wedding doesn't happen, Nathaniel loses his position, his father's backing, everything." Ruby gawked at her. "But there's no bride." Margaret's grip tightened on Ruby's hand. "Yes, there is. You, Ruby. You'll be the bride." Time slowed. Ruby's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't be serious. I'm the wedding planner, not the bride. I barely know Nate." Margaret leaned in, her tone fast and coaxing. "No one knows Emily ran. Your face will be covered. All you need to do is walk the aisle, say the vows, and sign the license. Nate will handle the rest. Just one night, Ruby. One night to save everything." Ruby's heart pounded. "This is insane," she whispered. "What if someone finds out? What if Nathaniel finds out?" "He won't," Margaret said sharply. "And if he does, he'll understand. He knows what's at stake. And Ruby, I trust you. You're the only one who can pull this off. You know every detail." Ruby's thoughts raced. She wanted to scream no, to run out and disappear. But then she thought of Nate. How quiet and polite he'd been in meetings. How exhausted he looked the day Edward humiliated him in front of staff. If this wedding didn't happen, Nate would suffer. I don't know," Ruby murmured, palms damp. "It feels wrong. It is wrong." Margaret gently cupped her shoulders. "Ruby, please. Nathaniel doesn't deserve this. Do it for him, for all of us. We'll compensate you. Anything you want. Money, travel, jobs." Ruby bit her lip. It wasn't about money, but the thought of helping Nate, and finally taking that world tour she always dreamed of, crept into her mind. A part of her screamed to run, but another whispered, maybe she could do it. Just one night? Ruby asked, barely audible. Just one night, Margaret promised, eyes shining with gratitude. Ruby inhaled deeply, as if leaping off a cliff. Fine, I'll do it. But if this implodes, don't say I didn't warn you. Margaret pulled her into a grateful hug, whispering, thank you. Ruby barely heard. Her heart thundered. She turned to face the gown. It stared back at her like a dare. Within 30 minutes, the bridesmaids, unaware of the switch, helped Ruby into the gown. Her fingers trembled as they zipped it up. The dress glittered with tiny diamonds and hugged her frame like a second skin. When they lowered the veil, Ruby peered into the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She was no longer Ruby Collins' planner. She was Emily Vanderbilt, the bride. Okay, Ruby, she whispered to herself, breath shaky. Walk, smile, say the vows. Then you're done. But as orchestral strings filled the ballroom and the grand doors opened, she knew nothing was simple anymore. Hundreds of eyes turned toward her, and at the end of the aisle, Nathaniel Harrington stood waiting, the man she was about to marry in the biggest lie of her life. Ruby Collins stepped onto the long red aisle, her bouquet trembling in her grip. The veil masked her face, but not her fear. Her heart thundered in her chest like a runaway drum. Both sides of the aisle were packed. Tycoons, celebrities, Harrington relatives, all watching with rapt attention, all believing she was Emily. The symphony's rising violins only made her want to turn and run, but her jeweled heels and the weight of the gown kept her tethered. At the far end, Nathaniel Harrington stood tall and unflinching, dressed in black, his sculpted face unreadable. His icy stare locked onto her, betraying nothing. Ruby couldn't tell if he knew. How could he? Even she couldn't believe what she was doing. Emily's father, who now played father of the bride, placed her hand in Nate's. His palm was cold, but he gave a small squeeze. She looked up, searching his face, but he only gave the faintest nod, like this was business, just business. The ceremony began. The officiant, a gentle, aging priest, spoke solemnly of union and devotion. Ruby tried to focus, but her head spun. She repeated the vows robotically, her voice soft yet steady, the veil hiding her uncertainty. I, Emily Vanderbilt, take you, Nathaniel Harrington. The words stabbed at her conscience. She wasn't Emily, she was Ruby, a planner pulled into a farce. Then came the rings. Nate took her hand and slid the ring onto her finger. His motion slowed midway, as if unsure. Ruby sensed him watching her more intently, as though he could see past silk and secrets. She fought the urge to flinch. She prayed he wouldn't question anything. But as she slipped his ring on, his hand stiffened. Then in a whisper only she could hear, Emily? Ruby froze. Her lungs stopped. She dared not respond. Instead she nodded, praying the veil hid her rising panic. Nate's jaw clenched. His lips pressed into a thin line. This turning into some Pretty Woman sequel where you fall for the stand-in and I end up heartbroken and sued, she said, crossing her arms tightly. Nate gave a humorless chuckle. Trust me, Ruby Collins, falling for anyone is not on my agenda. Good, she said, because I don't do fake kisses, fake cuddles, or fake anything unless we're in public, and I get my own room, preferably far away from yours. Done, he said without hesitation. You'll have the entire guest suite. It's bigger than most apartments. And no touching, she added quickly. Nate tilted his head. Touching? You know, hand-holding, cheek kisses, the oh, look how in love they are nonsense unless absolutely necessary. I'm not your emotional support pillow. Got it. Minimal touching. We'll be the most emotionally distant newlyweds in Manhattan, he said, raising his glass as if to toast. Ruby sighed, dragging her suitcase toward the hallway. This is insane. I should be home watching murder documentaries in fuzzy socks. But instead, Nate said, you're in a $20 million penthouse pretending to be Mrs. Harrington. Life's weird like that. As she reached the guest room, she paused in the doorway. Just so you know, I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this because your mother's a terrifying woman, and I have a weakness for plane tickets and dream destinations. Understood, Nate said from the living room, his voice quieter now. You're doing me a favor, and I won't forget it. Ruby closed the door behind her and exhaled, sinking onto the plush bed. The sheets smelled like lavender and money. Her heart still thudded from the whirlwind of the past 12 hours. She was now Mrs. Nathaniel Harrington, in name only, thank God. But the weight of that lie pressed down like a velvet curtain hiding chaos behind its folds. No crossing any lines. Nate nodded, returning to the sofa and grabbing a sheet of paper from the table. Agreed. Write down what you want. They sat across from each other, the tension easing slightly as they began setting rules. Ruby wrote quickly, no physical contact unless necessary in public. No interfering in each other's personal lives. The arrangement ends as soon as Emily is found or another solution arises. Nate added his terms. She'd have her own room, full access to the house's amenities. He'd ensure her privacy. When they both signed the paper, Ruby felt like she'd just signed a sentence. She glanced at Nate, who was loosening his tie, the movement slow and weary. The tie fell to the floor as he leaned back and closed his eyes, revealing a rare moment of vulnerability. The dim light highlighted the sharp angles of his face, but also the exhaustion he always hid. You okay? Ruby asked impulsively, her voice softer than expected. Nate opened his eyes, a flicker of surprise in them. You care? Not really. She shrugged, masking her embarrassment. You just look like you ran a marathon in that tux. He let out a low, tired laugh. You have no idea, Ruby. Living with my family is like running a marathon every day. And today was a long one. His words struck a chord. Despite his wealth and penthouse perfection, he was just as trapped as she was. But she said nothing. Instead, she stood and pulled her suitcase toward the guest room. Good night, groom, she said, tone lightly teasing to cut through the heavy air. Good night, bride, Nate replied, his eyes glinting with something, maybe curiosity or just exhaustion. As Ruby closed the guest room door behind her, she leaned against it, heart pounding. She'd just agreed to live a lie bigger than herself, but deep down, she felt something else too. A strange, quiet curiosity about Nathaniel Harrington. The man behind the perfect mask. The secrets he carried. Would you trade your freedom for $1 million? Share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt, high-stakes love stories. Ruby Collins stood before the mirror in the guest room of Nate's penthouse, adjusting the wine-red evening gown that shimmered under the lights. It had been a week since the fake wedding, and she still wasn't used to playing Mrs. Nathaniel Harrington in public. Tonight was the charity gala, another performance, another lie wrapped in velvet and diamonds. Nate knocked and entered, dressed in a black tuxedo. His face was impassive, but his gaze lingered on her for a moment. You ready? He asked, tone even. Ruby forced a smile, smoothing her hair. Ready as an actor before opening night, just hoping no one asks about our honeymoon plans. Nate's lips twitched in a rare smile. Say we're considering Paris. People love hearing that. The Plaza Hotel's banquet hall shimmered with chandeliers and elegant laughter. Ruby held Nate's arm, his grip more formal than affectionate, but she smiled brightly, shaking hands and answering questions with polished charm. Oh, Nate was wonderful. He surprised me with my favorite flowers right before the ceremony, she told a group of women, fully aware it was a lie. Ruby's effortless confidence disarmed even the most skeptical Harringtons. Nate's sister, Eleanor, a sharp-witted woman who enjoyed digging for flaws, actually laughed when Ruby shared a humorous story about picking their wedding cake. My new sister-in-law has some wit, Eleanor said, making Ruby exhale in relief. What caught Nate's attention, though, wasn't her performance. It was how she found joy in the small, hidden moments. At an outdoor party at the Harrington family estate, while guests sipped champagne, Ruby slipped into the moonlit garden. Her emerald dress flowed like wind over silk as she twirled, barefoot in the grass, as if dancing with the night itself. Watching from a distance, Nate felt something stir, something unfamiliar. After dinner one evening, a guest asked Ruby about travel. Where have you been, Mrs. Harrington? He asked, eyes curious. Ruby smiled, eyes sparkling. Not enough places, I'm afraid. But I've always dreamed of seeing the northern lights in Iceland. There's something magical about standing under a blazing sky, like the universe is telling a story. Nate, standing nearby with a glass of wine, paused. He listened. She didn't speak to impress. She spoke to connect. When the guest moved on, Nate approached her, his voice low. The northern lights, huh? You really think they're worth flying hours just to freeze? Ruby shrugged, playful. Absolutely. Haven't you ever wanted to do something just because it makes your heart race? He looked at her. Really looked. Maybe, he said softly. I just haven't found the reason yet. The Hampton sky was ablaze with sunset fire. Ruby stood on the balcony, breathing in the salty air, trying to shake off the tight grip of Nate's father's probing questions. Nate knocked, then entered casually. White shirt, sleeves rolled, tired in a way only someone used to performing could be. You okay? He asked. Ruby forced a smile. Fine. If you don't count your dad staring at me like I'm a contract to be signed. He's terrifying. Nate chuckled, the sound catching her off guard. Welcome to my world. My father thinks everything's a deal, even people. Forced to stay for the weekend, Ruby found herself noticing things. Nate helped the elderly gardener pick up dropped tools. He patiently listened to his uncle's ramblings. He even played a clumsy game of tag with his young cousins. These small moments cracked open her assumptions. On the second night, unable to sleep, Ruby wandered to the estate's living room. A fire crackled in the hearth. She curled up in an armchair with hot cocoa, staring into the flames as old memories flickered. An ex who left her for being too free, and the nagging sense that she didn't belong anywhere. Nate appeared, hair tousled, shirt rumpled. Can't sleep? He asked, settling into the chair across from her. No, Ruby replied, shrugging. Just thinking too much. You and me both, he muttered. My father called. Another lecture on duty. He stared into the fire. Sometimes I wonder if I'll ever live for myself. His words made Ruby pause. Tell me about it. What was your childhood like? Growing up in a family like this? It can't have been easy. Nate smiled faintly, but his eyes were sad. It wasn't. Every decision had to serve the family, the company. When I was 10, I wanted to learn guitar. My father said it was a waste of time. Made me study finance instead. Everything was planned. My school, my career, even who I'd marry. Ruby's heart tightened. So you never rebelled? Never did something just because you wanted to? Nate looked at her then, gaze softening. I'm jealous of you, Ruby. You live like the world's your playground. You've got scars, don't deny it. I see how you dodge talking about your past. But still, you choose freedom. Ruby blinked, startled by how easily he'd seen through her. She drew in a slow breath, the firelight flickering in her eyes as she finally spoke. I loved someone once, she said quietly. He told me I was too wild, not cut out for a stable life. When he left, I swore I'd never let anyone or anything hold me back. Her voice wavered. But sometimes, I wonder if freedom's really enough. The air thickened between them, charged, intimate. The fire didn't just warm the room, it melted walls. Nate leaned in, his eyes locked on hers. You're enough, Ruby. More than enough. Her heart stuttered. He was closer now, their breasts mingling. The pull between them was undeniable. When his hand rose to gently brush her cheek, she almost leaned into him. Their lips hovered, a breath apart. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Eleanor's voice cut through the moment. Oh, you two are still up? They sprang apart, faces flushed. Just talking, Ruby said quickly, rising to her feet. I'm heading to bed. As she left, she could feel Nate's gaze lingering, her heart pounding like a drumbeat. A week later, Ruby Collins stood by the towering glass window in Nate's penthouse, watching the city sparkle below. The memory of their almost kiss still haunted her, burned her. She had tried to keep her distance, playing the role of Mrs. Harrington at events, but their growing closeness was becoming impossible to ignore. Nate strolled into the room, sleeves rolled up, unusually casual. Planning to stare at the city all night? He teased. Ruby turned with a half smile, trying to mask her unease. Just figuring out how to survive another high society function. What's this week? Charity gala or your dad's cocktail soiree? No parties, he said with a grin. I've got the night off. But if you're up for it, I know a place. She raised a brow. You? Taking me out? Not a board meeting or a merger negotiation? Don't make me change my mind, he shot back, grabbing his jacket. Wear comfy shoes, Collins. 30 minutes later, Ruby stood in the heart of a buzzing Brooklyn street food festival. Scents of grilled tacos, steamed buns, and fresh churros filled the air. Latin music pulsed from a nearby speaker, and lights twinkled overhead like urban stars. Nate, in jeans and a black tee, looked like a misplaced sculpture among the chaos, but somehow the contrast made him even more magnetic. This was your idea? Ruby asked, biting into a fish taco. Nathaniel Harrington, the icy millionaire, likes street food? I grew up in New York, he shrugged, taking a bite of pulled pork. It wasn't always caviar in boardrooms. She laughed and pulled him toward a churro stand. All right, Mr. Groom, try this. If you hate it, I get to call you boring for life. Nate took a bite, and his eyes widened. Okay, not bad. Ruby clapped like a child, beaming. Her lightness chipped at his polished armor. They strolled together, trying everything, even stopping to watch a street dance crew. For the first time, Nate laughed, freely, and Ruby's heart felt lighter. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, they found a quiet bench by the Hudson. Manhattan's lights shimmered on the water. Ruby sipped a warm coffee, calm washing over her. Thank you, she said softly. Tonight was amazing. I didn't know you could be fun. I didn't know either, Nate replied, his voice low. But you changed things. His words curled in her chest like fire. She looked away, pretending to focus on her drink, but her heart was racing. A few days later, Ruby decided to do something simple, a thank you dinner for the festival night. She cooked tomato pasta and salad in Nate's sleek kitchen, humming softly to a pop song as she stirred the sauce. Nate returned from the office, surprised. You cook? He asked, leaning against the counter, watching her. I know a lot of things, Mr. Harrington, she replied, waving a wooden spoon. Sit. Chef Collins is serving tonight. They ate by candlelight at the ebony table. Conversation flowed easily, from her small-town childhood to his tales of sneaking out of dull galas. For the first time, they weren't acting. They were just them. Later, as they cleaned up, Nate dropped a plate, splashing soapy water on her. Ruby yelped, laughing. You run an empire but can't handle dishes? He smirked and flicked more water at her. Their laughter echoed, playful and raw. When it faded, a quiet settled. Intimate. They were close again. Too close. Nate brushed a droplet from her cheek. You're unlike anyone I've ever met, he murmured. Ruby's breath hitched. She should have stepped back, reminded him this was pretend. But her body betrayed her. He leaned in, and this time there was no interruption. His lips met hers, soft at first, then deep, consuming. Her fingers tangled in his shirt, his hand cupped her jaw. Time fell away, until panic struck. This isn't real, she whispered, breaking the kiss, eyes shimmering. I'm just a stand-in. Nate stared at her, voice steady. It's real to me. You're not a stand-in, Ruby. You're the one who's making me want more. She backed away, trembling. I need time. Then she turned and fled, tears falling, terrified, not of the kiss, but of what it meant. In his study, Nate stood motionless. That kiss had shaken him, awakened something deeper than desire. Hope. He wasn't ready to let her go. Not now. He swore silently. He would prove this wasn't a game. Meanwhile, Ruby stood in her room, suitcase half packed, staring at the window. 2 weeks had passed since the kiss, and the ache still lingered. She tried to pretend nothing had changed, but everything had. Every glance from Nate, every brush of his hand, set her heart racing. And just as she began to consider surrendering to it, everything shifted. At Harrington Enterprises, Nate was lost in thought when the call came. Nathaniel, Margaret said on the line, her voice cautious. Emily's back. She's at our home. She wants to see you. To apologize. His heart sank. Where has she been? Paris. She says she panicked, but she's ready now to move forward. Nate closed his eyes. Emily's return couldn't have come at a worse time. He was finally ready to tell Ruby the truth, that he wanted her for real, but duty called. At the Harrington estate, Emily sat poised in silk and remorse. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I was scared, but I want to fix this. I want us back." Nate looked at her, something hollow in his chest. "Emily," he said quietly, "things have changed." His father rose, voice icy. "Don't be foolish, Nathaniel. The marriage to Emily secures the Vanderbilt deal. That girl, Ruby, is a temporary mistake." Nate's jaw clenched. If only they knew, he thought. That mistake might just be the best thing that's ever happened to me, was the only home he'd ever truly wanted. He dashed toward the International Departures Board, scanning for the flight to Reykjavik. Gate 22. Without wasting another breath, Nate sprinted down the terminal, ignoring the stares, the protests from security, and the stitch forming in his side. Ruby Collins wasn't just another chapter. She was the entire book, and if he had to crawl to that gate, he would. At gate 22, the line was dwindling. Ruby stood near the end, hoodie up, head low, her suitcase handle gripped tight in trembling fingers. Her heart throbbed with every boarding call. She didn't look back. Couldn't. Because if she did and saw nothing, it would break her completely. Then, "Ruby!" Her name tore through the air like thunder. She froze. The crowd blurred, but that voice, raspy, desperate, unmistakably his, cut through everything. She turned slowly, eyes wide. And there he was, Nathaniel Harrington, suit wrinkled, hair disheveled, his breath heaving like he'd just outrun time itself. Their eyes locked, and the world paused. He walked up to her, breathless, then stopped just inches away. "I resigned," he said, voice rough with emotion. "Walked out of the boardroom, told my father to shove his company, told them all I didn't want Emily or money or expectations. I want you, just you." Ruby's eyes filled with tears, lips trembling. "Why now? After everything, after your mother, Emily, that text." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the crumpled letter, the one she left on the table. "Because this," he said, unfolding it gently, "made me realize I was already too late once. I'm not going to be late again." A pause, his voice cracked. "Ruby, I don't care where we live, what people say, or if we never fit into anyone's world. You're my world, and if you'll let me, I'll spend every day proving you're more than enough. You're everything." She laughed through her tears, her suitcase forgotten. "You idiot," she whispered. "You're really here." "I'm really here," he breathed. "Unless you're still planning to go see the Northern Lights alone?" Ruby stepped forward, wrapped her arms around him, and whispered against his chest, "Only if you come with me." The boarding call blared again, but they didn't move. This wasn't an ending. This was the beginning of something real, flawed, chaotic, but entirely theirs. The only thing that truly mattered now was finding her. Nate scanned the terminal, searching for Ruby's curly brown hair and petite frame. The overhead board showed her Reykjavik flight at gate 23, past international security. He sprinted toward the check-in counters, heart pounding. The lines were long, unmoving. He had no ticket, no way past security. "Ruby," he called, his voice cracking with desperation. The noise swallowed his cries. "Ruby!" Ignoring the glances from travelers, he pushed through the crowd, running the length of the check-in area, hoping to catch even a glimpse before she vanished through the gates. Meanwhile, Ruby Collins stood beyond the checkpoint. Her small suitcase had been cleared. Her boarding pass trembled in her hand. Dressed in a gray sweater and a green scarf, she tried to hide her red, tear-streaked eyes. Leaving New York to begin her long dream journey around the world should have felt freeing, but every step toward the gate felt like a stab to her heart. She thought of Nate, his rare smile, their kiss in the kitchen, the letter she'd left behind. She'd wished him happiness with Emily, but deep down she'd hoped he'd chase her, choose her. The loudspeaker crackled. "Passengers for Reykjavik, please proceed to gate 23. The flight will depart in 10 minutes. Ruby inhaled deeply, wiping her tears. This is the right thing, she told herself. He belongs in another world. I couldn't bear watching him live it with someone else. Back at the information desk, Nate was nearly frantic. He fumbled for his wallet, slapping down his credit card and ID. Please, I need to get to gate 23. I'm not boarding. I just need to find someone. The woman behind the desk, middle-aged with skeptical eyes but a soft heart, replied, Sir, you can't get past security without a ticket, but I can make an announcement. Her name's Ruby Collins, he said urgently. Please, tell her Nathaniel Harrington is waiting at the security checkpoint. The woman nodded and picked up the microphone. A moment later, her voice echoed through the terminal. Passenger Ruby Collins, please proceed to the security checkpoint. Mr. Nathaniel Harrington is waiting for you. Nate stood frozen, fists clenched, eyes darting over every face. What if she didn't hear? What if she was already gone? Ruby was nearly at the boarding gate when her name rang through the air. And then his name, Nathaniel Harrington. Her heart stopped. He's here. Her boarding pass felt suddenly heavy in her hand, her dream of freedom on paper. But her heart was louder. She turned and ran. She pushed through the crowd, breath-catching, until, there, Nate, disheveled shirt, eyes scanning wildly, hands trembling. Ruby, he called out again. Nate, she whispered, her legs moving before her mind could catch up. He saw her, and the world stopped. He rushed forward, grabbed her hands, and pulled her into his arms. Don't go, he breathed. Ruby, I can't let you go. I love you, not Emily, no one else, only you. Tears spilled from Ruby's eyes. Nate, I don't belong in your world, your family. Emily, I was just part of the act. No, he said firmly, tightening his grip. I resigned as CEO. Told my father, I choose her. I want a life where we're both free. Free to love, to live the way we want. You're my dream, Ruby, not the Northern Lights or anywhere else. His words shattered the last wall she'd built. She looked into his eyes, saw nothing but sincerity. A sob escaped, but this time from joy. Nate, are you sure? Sure of nothing more in my life, he said, pulling her closer. And there, beneath the fluorescent lights and public announcements, he kissed her. Fierce, fervent, promising. Ruby kissed back, arms around his neck, fears melting away. When they parted, she laughed softly through her tears. I guess the flight to Iceland will have to wait. Nate grinned, brushing a tear from her cheek. We'll go there together, and anywhere else you want. Just stay. As the final boarding call echoed behind them, Ruby didn't look back. She had found where she belonged, not in a destination, but in Nate's arms. Epilogue. Wherever you are. The sunset bathed the meadow in golden light as Ruby stood before the mirror of a small chapel's preparation room. Her wedding dress was simple but stunning. Soft white silk with delicate lace. No veil, no panic. Unlike before, this time she was herself, ready for a real marriage. Outside, Nate stood under an arch of wildflowers, dressed in a light gray suit, a far cry from the stiff CEO he once was. He chatted with close friends and family. Only 30 guests, only those who truly cared. Even Nate's parents were there, quietly proud. Ruby stepped out with a bouquet of carnations. Their eyes met, and they both smiled. He whispered as she reached him, You're more beautiful than the Northern Lights. She flushed and laughed, hand in his. The ceremony was short but heartfelt. Nate's vow, Ruby, you taught me that living isn't just existing. It's finding joy in the smallest moments. I promise to stand by you, wherever we go, and to choose you every day. Ruby's voice trembled, eyes glistening. Nate, you gave me a place to belong, without losing myself. I promise to write adventures with you and love you forever. Their kiss wasn't for show. It was the beginning of everything. Later, they danced under the moonlight at their rustic reception. Homemade food, wooden tables, lanterns swinging gently in the breeze. A local band strummed a soft acoustic tune. Ruby leaned into Nate during their first dance. This is the wedding I always dreamed of. He kissed her forehead. And this is the beginning I never dared to dream. Months later, they launched Wanderlust Events, a travel-focused event company blending Ruby's meticulous planning and Nate's creativity. From stargazing camps in Patagonia to barefoot beach weddings in Bali, they helped others chase love and freedom just like they had. But it wasn't just the vision that made it thrive. It was them, their synergy, their story, their love. One early morning, they stood beside a vintage green convertible, luggage packed in the trunk. It was time for their first joint road trip, down the U.S. West Coast. Ruby, in a white tee and jeans, wine tousling her hair, smiled at the open road. Nate, relaxed in sunglasses and a linen shirt, looked at her like she was his whole world. As they paused on a cliff above the Pacific, waves crashing below, Ruby asked softly, "Did you ever think we'd get here?" Nate looked at her, his gaze full of certainty. "Never. But you changed everything, Ruby. You're why I believe in the impossible." She leaned into him, hand clasped tight. "What's next after this?" "The Northern Lights," Nate said instantly, making her laugh. "Then anywhere you want," he added, "as long as we're together." They stood there, the ocean roaring below, and made a silent vow. Not in words, but in the way they held each other. Together, they climbed back into the car. As the sun rose over the horizon, Ruby turned up the radio. A cheerful song filled the morning air. She sang along, carefree. Nate laughed, deep, loud, free. The green convertible sped down the road, and so began their next great adventure.